Hey there, it's Krista Watson from Krista Quilts, back with a couple more free motion quilting designs for you to try. Now, as a little reminder, whenever you're stitching in free motion, you can stitch in any direction because your feed dogs are dropped and you're using a specialty foot. So in just a minute, I'm going to show you how to draw out two really cool designs called landscape lines and partial waves. After I draw them out, then I'm going to stitch them out on a practice sample so you can definitely follow along. Now you can get more information about both of these designs in my book, 99 Machine Quilting Designs. You want to give it a try? Let's get started. Landscape lines is design number 36 and partial waves is design number 37. Refer to my book in order to follow along. To draw out my wavy wiggly lines, I'm just kind of making bumpy lines, and then when I get to the end, I'm going to add a little point to it. Now it really helps me to draw out my designs just so I kind of know what it's going to look like when I fill in this space on my actual sample. Now remember, I'm not drawing out exactly what I'm stitching. This is just kind of an idea. And I can do these wavy bumpy lines horizontally from side to side. I can also do them up and down. I'm just drawing on my iPad, but you can do this on like a piece of paper, electronic, whatever you have, a scrap piece of paper if you need to. But basically I'm just doing these lines to fill in all the spaces. Now what's really fun with this design is if I do it in two directions, I can do horizontal lines and then vertical lines, and I can just switch back and forth to create a really cool pattern. The idea is it's going to look a little different every single time, and you're going to show your individual hand. So in this wider view, watch me quilt my landscape lines horizontally from one side of my sample to the other. Doesn't matter how big it is, it's basically the same technique. So the way I'm stitching bumpy lines is I'm just wiggling the fabric back and forth. If I wiggle a little bit more, I'm going to get more lines, more bumps, and if I wiggle a little bit less, there'll be a little more of a smooth organic line. So it's really up to you. Now when I get to the end of the line, I've got to figure out a way to turn around and go back the other direction. So I'm just making a point. So I'm going to do a wiggly bumpy line and a little point, and then I'm going to wiggle my way back to the opposite direction. Now I'm doing the same technique, but rather than going horizontally side to side, I'm stitching up and down instead. So the beauty of free motion quilting is that you can stitch in any direction without needing to necessarily rotate the sample. And depending on if you're doing side to side or up and down, these can really look interesting, and that's why I call them landscape lines, because they look like a fun landscape texture, like wavy seas or fire, or maybe even texture on a tree. Really, really cool. Really, the number of lines you're going to stitch is completely random, so just do what you feel like to fill in the space. We're really going for this organic, hand-spun, kind of handmade look with a sewing machine, which I really love. So do try stitching both of these lines in any direction that you want to and see which feels most comfortable. Depending on your thread or your machine, you may actually make better lines going in one direction, so it is okay to rotate the quilt to make sure that you're stitching the lines how you want them to look. Now, if I want to add more texture to my landscape lines, I can do what I call partial waves. So it's basically the same idea as the landscape lines, except the lines are shorter. I might mix in some of these partial waves with some of the full ones, and I'm just kind of snaking my way around, kind of meandering to fill in the spaces in lots of different directions. This is another design that I'm not going to overthink it too much. And just like the other design, I can do it horizontally, or I can do it up and down. So again, I'm just going to fill it in. When I stitch it up and down, and especially if I were doing this on like red thread, it would kind of look like fire or flames. Maybe if you're stitching on blue, it could look like water. And just like the other design with the wavy lines, you can just fill in all the spaces kind of randomly. But they're just shorter. Maybe I kind of meander my way just to fill in the odd spaces so that every space is filled. So now I'm going back to stitching the waves horizontally again, and it's a very similar technique to what I just showed you, but now instead of doing full waves all the way across, I'm doing what I call partial waves, where I'm stitching a line, maybe I'll stitch one full line and then half of another line, and I'm really still going back and forth filling in the space, but I'm adding this extra bit of texture with these partial waves. Like I said, texture, that's kind of my favorite word when it comes to this. Interesting, organic, all those kind of things. I'm going to continue stitching this out until I fill up the entire sample. And like I said, you could quilt these in both directions. You could meander them a little bit more. The important thing is just have fun, experiment and play, and just enjoy the process. And the main thing here, just try to keep your lines a little bit smooth, but if they're not, that's okay. It's still gonna look good. Here's my finished sample combining landscape lines and partial waves. Now it's your turn to try. Now I want you to take a look at the quilt behind me called Woven Ribbons. Now I don't have a pattern for it, it's just made from a couple of strips of black background and solids. And the reason I use solids is so that you could really see the quilting. If you want to see the quilting, use solids and a contrasting thread. If you want to hide your quilting, use blending threads and more prints to obscure what you're doing. So with this quilt, I use the wavy lines in combination with another free motion quilting design to give it a little bit more of a custom look. I also have another quilt where I quilted partial waves on a quilt called Spools. Now this pattern can be found in my book, Piece and Quilt with Precuts. And basically what I did is I filled in the spool areas with those partial wavy lines to give them some really yummy texture. So now I invite you to try out either one of these designs on your own quilts and let me know how it goes. Do you prefer one or the other, or do you want to try them together in the same quilt? Be sure to check out the description box below for more tips and tricks to help you on your machine quilting adventures. I'll see you in the next one.